Welcome to Apollo Detectives. This is Apollo Detectives 13. Unlucky, you might think. I don't. My name is Ben Emlyn-Jones, and I am joined with the team. As always, we have three great Apollo detectives with us today, starting with Detective Inspector Neil Ward. Hey, Neil, how you doing?
Hello, Ben. Hello, Marcus, and hello, Jarrah. Hello, everybody else watching and listening. I'm fine, thank you. It's now autumn. We've just hit the season of Halloween, so I've been out doing a few Halloween talks. So it's getting very dark and cold in the UK, and it will get darker and cold as we go on. But we've got the Apollo detectives to brighten those dark wintry evenings, I think. So I look forward to taking part today.
We certainly do. And also, we're going to head straight over to Australia, where I don't think it's autumn now. I think it's the other way around, probably. Jarrah White, hello, how you doing? Oh, Jarrah's froze. Oh, Jarrah's frozen. You all right there, Jarrah?
I thought it was you guys that froze. Sorry.
I said, Jarrah, how you doing?
It was you guys that froze. All right, I'm doing all right so far. I thought you guys had frozen there, but it seems it was me. It really is cold tonight. I'm calling you guys from around it's about 10 o'clock at night here.
It's always, I know you're always at sort of odd times whenever we have you on the call because you're in Australia. But closer to home, I'm pleased to say, is none other than Mr. Nexus himself, Marcus Allen. Hello, Marcus. How's it going?
Hello, Ben. Hello, Neil. Hello, Jarrah. It's doing well, thank you. Nexus has had a bit of a contribution to the debate. We published the article from Bart Sibrel about the deathbed confession, which was the deathbed confession of the senior security officer at Cannon Air Force Base, where he witnessed many prominent people present at the faking of the Apollo 11 landing.
I've my issue arrived on time, I'm pleased to say. Yeah, very interesting stuff. So to begin with, we've got a number of subjects we want to get through on this particular program. And we're going to start with our esteemed producer and director, Neil Ward. So, Neil, it involves me, actually, because you and I did a little experiment, didn't we?
Yeah, before we get to that, I just thought I'd talk about a few projects that I've been doing over the summer. And one of them is with Ben, which involved a little visit to a quarry and a US flag. But before we get to that, I'll just talk about this little thing here. Now, many NASA fans will recognize this as a lunar module, and it's made by the Revell company, a rival company to the Airfix company. So mine's not completed, and unfortunately, a few of the radar dishes have fallen off, so I've got to re-glue those on. But this is basically the lunar module as depicted on all the NASA projects. There we go, it's a bit more in focus. So I've been playing around with this one, and as you can see, you can detach the top. I haven't got around to gluing it yet, but obviously in the idea of Apollo, this is a section that would launch away from the descent part and go off and rendezvous with the mothership, if you like, the command module. Now, the Luna Reconnaissance Orbiter is the NASA probe that goes around the moon taking photographs, and it's allegedly taken photographs of many of the Apollo landings. And so I actually messed around with this and photographed this using my mobile phone from this angle. And so what I'm going to do is share my screen and show you some results I've been playing around with. So I'll just find the share screen button. Most viewers might be familiar with the lunar reconnaissance photos of the alleged Apollo landing sites, which many propagandists cite as proof of the Apollo landings. However, with my partly complete Revell lunar module kit, I took some photos of the detached descent section of the LEM, complete with long shadows. After a bit of cutting out in Photoshop, I then placed the module into an actual LRO photo. I added in dust disturbances from a blast of the rocket thrust and even foot tracks of the Apollo astronauts. The big clue of it being a deliberate fake is it being labelled as Apollo 18. a mission that never happened. But then again, did any of them really happen, like we are told? So is it LRO or a clever photo manipulation? You decide. It was one small step for Neil, but one damp flag for Harrison Smith back in 1972. It was fellow Apollo detective Canadian Scott Henderson who first brought to our attention the US wet flag drying back from the Apollo 17 mission of 1972.
The fact that we got to have this wet flag in here. I mean, if you're, running around, you've seen the equipment, you've seen it just aging and bleached in the sun, molded. You've seen everything else because it was just shot outside. And here's a soaking wet flag.
However, many pro-NASA fans have constantly argued, saying the area of damp drying back is in fact just shadows. Further investigation, looking at the same flag in different photos, reveals the same damp patches, which, if were shadows, would actually move or change as the flag is photographed at different angles. One pro-Apollo fan, who came onto our previous episode, Steve Mumbling, actually suggested taking a US flag and making it damp to see if it showed wet areas.
If you wanted to prove this, I mean, what you need to do is contact a company called Anin, who actually made that flag, and then ask them to sell you a flag, and then soak it, and then film it drying out.
That down there is Portland.
This was something that I got in mind for myself, but was waiting for a clear, warm, sunny day to try it out for ourselves.
Now Neil here.
That sunny day happened to come when fellow Apollo detective host Ben Emlyn-Jones visited me in Dorset, and we took him to the Isle of Portland. I had earlier purchased a US flag to attempt to make it damp.
Darn it! I don't think we didn't check.
We're gonna have to send this American back to China. It doesn't fit.
Unfortunately, our first attempt failed because the flag would not fit onto the pole I had got for it. Our second attempt proved more successful, as this time we relocated to the Portland Quarry, which was a suitable moonscape for our experiment.
That's good. It's actually a better thing.
And you can spray with that.
Yeah. So let's see if that goes.
Squirty, squirty.
That's the magic words. Squirty, hurty, Apollo nerty,
Fruit loopy.
Apollo moon.
Listener.
So essentially,
As if it's the fault of the United States. It's not.
yeah. Right. Okay. See there now. You can see the damp on that. Pushing it back a little bit. Now, it's not super hot here.
No, but there's sunlight.
Now, you can see it's here, and there's light areas here, and there's damp areas here. And obviously they're starting to dry back as we speak. It's still quite wet, because obviously I've just literally sprayed it. So I deliberately done it as a comparison to show that it's not shadows. Here is my shadow from the sun, and you can see the darkness of the blue over the stars and stripes, so that is definitely a shadow. But when I take my hand away, you've got the lightness here, and this is where the damp is across here, across the stars and stripes. And again, there's dark areas on the stars and stripes and lighter areas. A particular part here is where it's drying back as well. So, do you think that's a good experiment?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It seems to. I think it should reignite the debate. Obviously, Steve Mumbling and the other believers, the Apollo believers, are going to pick holes in it, but they're going to do that no matter what we do.
Yeah.
But this hopefully will reignite some interesting debate. Was it Scott who noticed it?
Scott Henderson,
Yeah.
Canadian Scott Henderson,
Yeah, he
brought this
noticed
to
it.
everyone's attention, and it's fired off quite a big debate over the past 5 or 6 years. So well done, Scott.
Yeah, he's one of our Apollo detectives.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely I can see a light area here and a dark area here, and I can see it here too as well where it's drying back. I don't know if that's visible on the camera, but definitely a light area here and dark area here. And it's one of these things you can try at home without the help of an adult, everybody. Well, you might need an astronaut.
If you know any.
Yeah, if you know any.
So there you go.
Is it a damp flag or just shadows? You make up your mind.
Right, Neil. So now, obviously, I know a lot of people are going to say this, and you know, this is not a perfect reproduction of the original experiment or the original situation, because to do that, we'd have to fly to the moon ourselves, or wherever this was all done. So all the mumblers of this world and their associated works, of course, are going to pick holes in this. However, I think we did demonstrate, for example, what fabric looks like when it's wet compared to dry. And I know it's not the same fabric. I know that it's nylon, not canvas, but I still think that was interesting what we did, and I think it raises awareness of the issue, and hopefully will draw people's attention towards that and other issues connected to the Apollo record.
Yeah, I think it was a very successful test, actually, and we had the right conditions, and it just took a bit of an imagination, and we actually took up on Steve's challenge, really. I mean, I had kind of thought about it for some time that I wanted to do this kind of test, and I thought it'd be good to do it with Ben, because I know you'd be a willing participant, and we had the right conditions, the right location, the right weather, and everything. And so it was all systems go, and I think we had a successful little test. And I think we've probably, I'd like to think that we've proved that Scott Henderson's findings of the Apollo 17 damp wet flag, as it's become known, we've kind of confirmed that that is the case, and it's not just shadows as all the Apollo defenders say it is, because that flag has been seen at different angles, and you can still see the dampness in the same point. And if you're showing that at different angles, then the light and the shadows would change accordingly, but the damp still shows regardless of what angle you see it at. And we kind of backed it up, I think, with our Apollo wet flag test. So thanks for taking part.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Are you flying the flag now at your house? I think the Americans have moved in.
So I think it's over to Jarrah's presentation, because Jarrah's had quite a few interesting experiences of late researching the Sea Rock and also taking part in an online debate.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have. Okay, well, first things first, I managed to track down the earliest release of the Sea Rock photo. In fact, I've actually got the printout here. Let me first see if I can screen share this. Otherwise, I've got the original right here, so I'll just try this.
Yeah, again, we can't see your camera at the minute, Jarrah. So
I can see Jarrah. I can see Jarrah.
Oh, I can't. It must be my refresh rate. Okay, apologies.
Okay,
There he is. Yeah, I can see a screen share coming up.
See the Owlis article. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. Let me just move this over here. Okay, so what I did was I managed to, it's first some history and stuff. Rene was the first one to bring the sea rocket to everybody's attention. He included it in the book NASA Mooned America. So I can just enlarge the screen there. You can see there's a sea on the rock. And David Percy and Mary Bennett pointed this out. There's also a sea on the ground there too, right? Which would be, Rene believed that what they do in film studios is they put the little markers on the ground, ABC 1 to 10, whatever, and they put that particular prop over the corresponding label, right? But for whatever reason, this label was still visible both on the ground and on the rock itself, right? Now, in later releases of the picture, we can see that they've got rid of the sea. The sea is no longer visible, although the sea on the ground is still present. You can see the little sea on the ground, but there's no sea on the rock here. This is the version that's been published to the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal and the Apollo Archives website. Now, the longest time it was claimed that, this was claimed by Steve Troy of the old Lunar Anomalies website. These were people who reckon there's bases on the moon, or alien bases on the moon, ancient artifacts, all that kind of nonsense, and so they claimed that it was just a hair. Well, they cited this particular enlargement here, claiming, oh, it's just casting a shadow. Well, here's an example that I've taken with, this is a marker pen. You can see how it looks like it's casting a shadow, but it's not. You can tell it's just the marker pen ink. You know, it's the uneven spread of the marker pen. You know, that should have been enough to discredit this thing, but for whatever reason, this nonsense claim that it was just a hair on the negative got pushed, echoed, and amplified all over the place. Well, when I spoke to Ralph Rene about this, he told me that he first found the sea rock photo. It was actually a friend's daughter who pointed out the sea on the rock, but the photo itself, he had found that in this space technology book, which was published in 1981, and the same sea rock was there. Now, I also found an even earlier release. This was this here is the Apollo story. Very superfluous title, I know, but it features the sea rock photo too, and you can see that the sea on the rock is still present. All right, so we know that it was there as early as 1972. Matter of fact, I've got the original that book here, the Apollo story, right here. I'm not sure if you can see my camera. I'm screen sharing right now, but I've got the original book here, and let me see, the sea rock photo appears 121, page 121. You can see the sea on the rock is on that page. Now, I made a whole video about this that was called Moonfaker Rocks and Crocs that came out in 2008. Now, in response to this, many propagandists, they found this, the front page of Aviation Week in Space Technology, which was released May 8, 1972. And you can see the sea, in this case, the sea is not there, and they claimed, oh, this is proof that the sea was not there originally. Obviously, I was not content with that. I wanted to track down, because this wasn't the earliest release of the picture. You know, the pictures from Apollo 16, they were released a week earlier than that. And so I managed to track down old archived newspapers and stuff. I managed to find the photo published in the Canberra Times and also the Sydney Morning Herald. Right? Unfortunately, obviously, these are microfilms. They didn't have enough resolution or clarity rather, to see whether or not the sea was there originally. And so, but this put me on the right trail. You see, if you read this caption here, it attributes the picture to AAP cable picture. Now, AAP is Australian Associated Press, and AP cable picture that would mean Associated Press wire photo, as it's more commonly called. What they would do is to release, in the days before the internet, they would, you can find videos showing how it is done. It's very interesting. They have this cylindrical scanner. They would basically coil the photograph around this particular roller. They would have a little caption taped to it, and there was a little scanner that would, as it's rolling around and around, it would scan the picture as one long image strip. They would send it over telephone wires to the various newspapers and agencies and whatnot, and they would reconstruct that picture at their end of at the receiving end of the call. And so now, obviously, you can find various press photos on eBay and various other places where they sell things secondhand. I got this particular one off eBay. This is a eBay seller called Historic Images. This guy basically finds all these old archival, pictures of historical significance, and sells them on eBay. I got into a bit of a bidding war here. I kid you not, I ended up putting a maximum bid of something like $900 something and stuff. Fortunately, it was just under 80. And so I ended up getting the sea rock picture. Here is that picture. Just enlarge it so you can see it more clearly. Okay, this is the earliest release of the photograph. Okay, and in fact, it's actually dated, as you can see, May 8. And this here, it says MSC 14. MSC stands for Manned Spacecraft Center. Nowadays, it's called the Johnson Space Flight Center. And this is the earliest release. As you can see here, we got the sea still on the rock, and there's the sea on the ground. And well, obviously, it was there originally. Now, this is I actually added a appendix to this after publishing this article, right? Because obviously, I kept wondering, well, clearly they acted fast to remove the sea, because it wasn't showing in the Aviation Week front page. Right, so they had to have deleted it somewhere between May 1st and May 8th. And well, then I wondered, well, why does the sea continue to appear in subsequent, releases like the 1981 book that Rene had, and this one here, actually, this is a circa 1975 release, because you can see it has the NASA worm logo on it. You just enlarge it, and you can see just barely, it's a bit pixelated, but you can see the sea on the rock is still there. Right, and so I was reading through the various publications and also the NASA oral histories. I learned that I found the answers to why we continue to appear. The short answer is basically there were too many unaltered pictures to account for. Right, in fact, here we got an account from J.W. Holland, who was at the the photographic division. He was the photographic division chief of the technical laboratory branch. You see, at Marshall's at Manned Spaceflight Center, now the Johnson Spaceflight Center, they have the Photographic Technical Lab, or PTL, that's where these pictures would be developed. Here this is his own account. He says, from the original film, duplicate masters were produced and the original film secured. We try not to use the original film unless special requirements were needed. From the masters, screening prints were made for Public Affairs Office to view and select for news releases. Duplicate negatives were made and used for printing. For example, 8x10 color or larger, color transparency, slides, etc. All the original film that supposedly went to the moon, was brought back to Building 8 at JSC and produced, duplicated, and printed. And so, there's another fellow by the name of Robert Shanebrook, who was Kodak's global project manager. He estimates that the PTL produced about 100 or so copies of these masters. And so these were obviously sent out to NASA's various agencies, NASA's various divisions rather, and also their contractors as souvenirs. Hey, here's a souvenir. You're going to have that. You're going to do what you want with it and stuff. And so I conclude here, given that the PTL went above and beyond to keep the originals, the masters, and the duplicates clean and safe, it's important to note these were developed under ultra-clean lab conditions. All the duplicating, they even went to the effort of decontaminating the pictures, decontaminating the negatives before duplicating them or developing them. So there was no chance that a hair could have found its way onto these things. And I conclude, given that the PTL went above and beyond to keep the originals, the masters, and their duplicates clean and safe during the developing and duplication processes, it is doubtful that a hair could have found its way onto any of them during said processes. And had a hair contaminated one of these 100 master duplicates during a single print run, it should not have reappeared in subsequent print runs made by different sources, i.e. MSC or JSC in Houston and NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. One of the things that I forgot to tell you is that the copy that Rene had found in his book, the copy that Rene had found in the space technology book was tracked back to NASA headquarters. How do I stop screen sharing? Here we go. Stop sharing. I haven't used this in a while. Okay, stop sharing. Yep. Okay. It's the copy that Rene had found in the space technology book was tracked all the way back to NASA headquarters. It wasn't tracked to the Lunar and Planetary Institute as Steve Troy claimed. And similarly, this Apollo story book, it also got the photographs from the same source. It says here on the opening cover, the publishers are grateful to NASA, Washington, D.C. Without whose cooperation in providing photographs, this book would not have been possible. See, I'll just show it there. It says right there. And just for your viewing pleasure, I've also got the Sea Rock photo. My photo out. I got it still sealed in the cardboard and stuff. I don't like to take this out too often because it's so rare and stuff. Well, there you go. You can see it right there. Wow. Zoom in. See, you can see hopefully this will focus right. You can see it's got the sea on the rock. You see that? Mm-hmm. And it says, I'll read you. It says here, MSC 14, May 1. Rugged going. Astronaut Charlie Duke, Jr., Apollo 16, lunar module pilot, stands beside lunar roving vehicle at Station 4 near Stone Mountain during the mission's second extravehicular activity, EVA-2, on April 22nd, 1972, blah, 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 1972. NASA photo via APY photo. Okay, so this proves that the sea was indeed there originally. And I mentioned how if it was just a hair on a negative, it would not have reappeared in subsequent print runs because of how all the efforts they went to keep the originals and their duplicates clean during the development process. They managed to track down a few other copies of the Sea Rock. This one, for example, as you can see, you can see the sea is there too. Mm-hmm. And this must be from around, this is a red label picture from, actually says up here, Johnson Space Flight Center. Right, the worm logo means it has to have come out from around 1975. So this is a later print run of the same picture, and you can see the sea is on that one too. I also managed to find this here. This is a really old one here. This is by the company Space Photos. Right, they would. This was a third party. They would produce copies of NASA photos, and they would sell them to consumers. They got their copy of the Sea Rock as well, and as you can see, the sea is there. This was all created from presumably these guys received a copy of the masters from NASA as well. They would print off their own copies and they would sell these. And theirs obviously has the sea on it. The sea obviously was there originally. There's no question about that.
Yeah. So, well, Jarrah, I've got to say thank you very much and well done for getting hold of the original photos. It's always important to go back to source, and I'm glad it wasn't too expensive for you. Do you still take donations? We'll have to chip in. So what you conclude, I suppose, therefore, is that the letter C actually was present at the location physically where the photograph was taken. I think that's fair to say. And that then the challenge there is for people who believe that was on the moon. Why is a letter from the Latin script printed on the side of a moon rock on the moon, and indeed on the ground beside it, on the lunar surface? So if anyone who believes the official story can tell us that, let me know. I mean, I'm familiar with like clean rooms and things like this because I was watching a documentary about there's a clean room where supposedly the rocks that were supposedly from the moon are stored. Someone gave a tour. You couldn't see these rocks. They wouldn't bring them out to show anyone, but they showed them where they are. They are actually kept in a sealed container, which is filled with nitrogen, I believe. And they're never ever exposed to the open air. The pieces of the asteroid that was collected a few weeks ago by the NASA mission to the asteroid Bennu are also kept at this location. So and I know that the photo negatives, the original photo negatives, are still kept. I don't know is it that location or is it somewhere else, but they are kept in a clean room. I don't know where is it.
They're kept at the PTL lab that I had mentioned in my presentation. As I said, they keep them under lock and key. They say that they try not to use the originals as often as they need to and stuff, because obviously this is like one of a kind thing. So they use duplicates of the master copies. You know, they made master copies and they would duplicate the masters. And as I said, all those masters and those duplicates were made under ultra clean lab conditions, and they even went to the effort of decontaminating the films before using them. So there was no chance that a hair could have found its way onto the originals, onto the masters, or any of these things. And the fact of the matter is, because there were so many duplicates of the originals, because there were so many duplicates, obviously they couldn't track down each and every one of these things and have it all airbrushed out. So that has to be why the sea continued to appear in other print rooms and other sources and stuff.
Even in places like Boots, you know, it's very rare for foreign objects to get into a photo development process. I mean, it does happen occasionally, but it's pretty rare. But this was not Boots. This was not a normal photo development location. So, yeah, thanks very much, Jarrah. That's very interesting indeed. I hope that give people food for thought. You've definitely got some new information there. Very important.
It's interesting. I just wondered, based upon the idea that you're placing a sea rock down as part of a set, would there be, has anyone come across any other kind of letters or numbers on rocks? So, I mean, I found a few oddities myself in rocks, but not necessarily letters. Well, some could be letters. It's hard to say. But was there, do you think that kind of supports the hypothesis that there could be that kind of plan in ahead, that they would actually mark out certain props, if you like, to be placed in certain points? Because I think on the Orlis website, they're suggesting something, and it's fairly complicated to read and understand. You have to be a chess player, I think, to understand it. But they talk about how these things were framed like a game of chess or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. He found David Percy. He found that the very placement of the sea rock seems to, if you were to lay a chessboard over the top of the image, the sea rock seems to occupy 2/3 of where the C3 sector would be on a chessboard.
Right.
Let me just see if I can screen share this now again. I'll just actually have that. It's mentioned in my article. Let me just get this. Where's the screen share button? A minute. Start sharing. Okay. Okay, can you see that now? The chessboard? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. C rock to C3.
Yeah.
He has a article about that where he discusses this in more detail. It's down here somewhere. Yeah, if you want to check that out, you can go check that out on Ollis. Now, your second question was, you asked if there has been any other letters and numbers or whatever and stuff on the things. It's funny you should ask that, because shortly after I'd released the my original Sea Rock video, a viewer wrote in saying that, hey, here's another rock from the same location. This one actually appears in multiple shots that has a number 2 on it. There's a number 2 on the rock. You know, so maybe they used an assortment of letters and numbers when they went to. I noticed a lot of people, a lot of propagandists, they like to claim, oh, well, if you're going to label it with letters, that only limits you to 26 props. Well, not if you switch over to using numbers at some stage.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Interesting.
Marcus, do you have anything you want to add?
Sorry, I'm just replying to Scott. Scott and Robert would like to join in, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. If you can bring them in.
Hey, there he is. Andy.
Hello.
How are you doing, guys?
Good to see you. Good to see you, Robert. Good to see you both. Welcome.
I don't believe I've met yet, you, Robert. Have I? Robert, or is it Robert or Robert?
I haven't seen you. I haven't met you yet. No, I mean, we talked a little bit, texted back and forth with the Skype there because I screwed something up. Remember? I didn't know how any of that stuff worked, right? So when Raza made me an administrator, I went and I put a video up, and I accidentally bumped yours off. So I typed you back, and I says, "Oh, I don't know how this stuff works."
Okay.
Bit. Robert, you should tell them that it's 4:45 in the morning where you are.
Oh yeah. No, I start at 1:30 here. This is where I start. Yeah.
Right now it's about 10 to 11 here in Australia at night.
Oh, at night.
Yeah. Yes. Look at me, I'm all darkened around the eyes and stuff.
That's all the problem with the international panel. That's always the way, isn't it? Yeah. That's always the way.
Cruise, it's around Earth.
Yeah.
Nice beard, Scott. You look suits you, mate.
It's coming.
It suits you.
Yeah, getting a little bit winter here. It was down to -3 last night or the night before.
I just missed the presentation. We're discussing my sea rock finding.
Yes, I've looked at that closely. Why would they send you that and call it the original picture?
Let me just clarify that it's Associated Press wire photo. You see, some guy was selling this on eBay. You see, back in the days, I've explained this already, but back in the days when before the internet, what they would do, the press they would use to send out pictures, there was Associated Press wire photo. They would basically scan the picture and then send it out over telephone wires to all the different newspapers, so they could print it off their end and then put it in the newspapers in time for to meet the print run. Now, obviously, wire photo is obsolete, and so you can find all these old Associated Press pictures on eBay or Amazon or wherever. And by pure chance, I managed to find the sea rock picture, and it proves that the sea was there on the rock originally, because this photo was dated May 1st, 1972.
Yes. Yeah, that makes it very clear that it wasn't done on an additional scan later on. Then.
You know what was interesting? I took that picture of yours and I put it into Adobe. Now it's let's see, I have the Adobe After Effects, the expensive or the one you pay for, $600 a year. Anyways, I put it into After Effects and I had a look at it, and you can actually see the hair follicle.
Wow. It's not a hair follicle. It was there originally.
I get that. What I'm wondering, though, is if when they were using the optical printer, or
when they were not developing it, I guess that's a hard one. If they were developing it and a hair got in there, you would actually need the original. And that's the problem, because they will not release the original films.
They could have made that look like
it's like after. Yeah, well, that was
transformation.
They modified it. They modified
the hair.
But
I think what happened was that hair, or whatever that is, might have fallen in somewhere in there when they were rephotographing it. Because if that was the original photograph,
I actually dispute this in my article towards the end. I had an appendix here, right? And we were just discussing this, but basically what they would do is they had the originals kept at the photographic technology lab, right? And these were kept under ultra clean lab conditions. It was all kept at under controlled temperatures, under a vacuum. In fact, they actually had they keep the film inside a freezer that's installed inside another freezer just to make sure it's the right temperature. And they even go to the effort of decontaminating the films before they do anything with them. And here's an account by John W. Holland. I've already read this out, but for you guys who missed it, he says, from the original film, duplicate masters were produced and the original film secured. We try not to use the original film unless special requirements were needed. From the masters, screening prints were made for Public Affairs Office to view and select for news releases. Duplicate negatives were then made and used for printing. For example, 8x10 color pictures or larger, color transparency slides, etc. All the original film that went to the moon was brought to the Building 8 at JSC and processed, duplicated, and printed. And now it's been estimated that about 100 or so of these prints were made at PTL. Now these were obviously all sent off to NASA's various agencies, various facilities for duplications or printing or whatever and stuff. And from this I state in my article, given that PTL went above and beyond to keep the originals, the masters, and their duplicates clean and safe during the developing and duplication process, it is doubtful that a hair could have found its way onto any of them during said processes. And had a hair contaminated one of these 100 master duplicates during a single print run, it should not have reappeared in subsequent print runs made by different sources, i.e. MSC/JSC in Houston and NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C.
Really? Now, when they did March to the Moon, they claimed that they went back to the original. That was their claim.
Yeah, they always claimed that the originals don't show it. And here's the thing, though. They said that the C was tracked down to the Lunar and Planetary Institute in Houston. Well, obviously that's false, because the wire photo that I have is tracked back to... nowadays, it's called the Johnson Space Flight Center. Back then, it would have been called the Manned Space Flight Center. It actually says on the picture, it says MSC. MSC is the abbreviation for Manned Spacecraft Center.
Mm-hmm. So it was actually something there. It was something physically at the scene where this photograph was made.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of they may have made it look more hair-like. I mean, I wouldn't underestimate the possibility that they would add that as disinformation. I think it's just
pareidolia, really, when people say, "Oh, it's just a hair." They claim that you can see the hair casting a shadow. I actually showed an example in my article of marker pen writing and stuff. You know, depending on how hard you're pressing on the paper, you know, the marker pen shell will come out thicker or thinner. You know, under the right conditions, it may look like a hair, or a shadow rather. But you know, obviously, it's a marker pen.
Can you show that picture again, Jarrah? Can you show that picture up again? Because
give me a moment.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to ask you about that. And it was right underneath the rock. It looks like there's a little ring or something that's hanging off of that rock on the right-hand side of that picture, if you're staring at it. So if you're looking at the picture face on, it seems like there's a little ring right on the bottom of that rock, and I'm wondering what on earth that is.
Okay, this is what I was just talking about now, the comparison between marker pen and the C. Is this what you were talking about, or are you talking about the full-size one?
Yeah, the full-size one.
Okay, well, this is the unaltered one from the thing.
Yeah, you can even see it right there, too. Yeah, there. What is that black thing down on the bottom? Is that just a shadow?
Is that the shadow from the experiment casting across? Because there's the black line going right across, and I can see what a lot of people originally thought was a crease in the paper mache. But
yeah, you see that? You see that black? Like, Neil, is that what you're talking about? Because I'm looking at on the rock itself, right on the rock itself. There's
when you see the shadow coming from the experiment they've got lined up there. I can't remember what that experiment does, but
no, that's just
it's called
it's called over the rock. I think that's a shadow of the experiment antenna thing that's on top of it.
Yeah, that's been
I can see it. I could see.
Rene reckons it was a crease in the rock. I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, it's just this tripod thing casting a shadow on it." That's the explanation I've heard for that.
But the shadow is running right underneath the rock. It's not even touching that black thing there.
Yes, interesting.
It looks like a ring, doesn't it? It looks like a ring attached to the. I see. I know what you mean. It does look like a sort of ring.
Am I looking at the wrong bit? We're talking about the left-hand side of the rock, yeah?
No, the right.
Bottom, the right-hand side, bottom right-hand corner. Okay, yeah.
I always thought this rock
shadow, and it kind of lines up with the shadow as it goes across the surface, so it might be.
I always thought it looked like kind of like a face myself, rather, because you see this bit here, it looks like a mouth. This bit here looks like an eye, you know?
But Jarrah, what we're looking at is that ring though down at the bottom. I don't know if you're seeing it there. Yeah, it's right in the middle of the paper, right in the middle now. If you move your arrow down to it there,
no, tell me
exactly. Yeah, it's actually a circle right there.
That black part going up onto the rock. Yeah. So is that black part below the vertical line we're talking?
I feel like I'm not sure what you're talking about here. You're talking about this bit here?
Yeah, the little ring thing. Yeah, it looks like a ring attached to the rock.
Yeah, though that black thing there. It almost looks like you could take the rock and hang it on a hook.
I can't quite see if it's part of the shadow of the tripod or if it's actually something embedded in the rock. I can't tell.
I can't quite see what you're talking about. Are you talking about the sea rock or this? It looks like a footprint here.
No, it's actually it's on the rock itself. It's where the cursor is. It's a C. It looks like a C on the rock there. It's a clip. It looks like a clip that's sticking out of the rock.
You mean here?
No, you had your arrow right on it. You had your arrow right on it. Yeah. Now follow that black there. It shows up. No, that black thing, Jarrah. That's you have it on it. I don't know. Maybe you can't see it from your end there, but it goes up like a clip. Like if you could picture it in your head, it's like a ring in a bull's nose.
Yeah. It's the vertical line going up the rock. Yeah,
I see it. Yeah,
yeah, that's it. The arrow on it.
No,
maybe you could do a screen share and you show us what you're talking about. That might be better. We just stop screen sharing.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we could do that. I'll just pull up that sea rock there. If I can, here, I'll tell you what. I'll take a snapshot of it here, quick. Well, can you put it back up? I'll take a snapshot and I'll show you.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Your picture should be better. Robert, you've got a better shot of that.
Yeah. What I'll do then, I'll snap a screenshot of it here quick, and there we are. So we're looking at 386 here. Okay, so there we are. Pop you up over here. And there. Okay, so now we're in business. Okay, I'll share the screens. Stop sharing mine. I'm sharing.
Okay, waiting on your call.
All right. This thing here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Looks like a ring.
Yeah. So I thought that was the tip of the shadow of the experiment, the antenna of the experiment.
But the antenna's funny thing is, it's just not touching it though. It just seems this is coming from somewhere else. Now, when I put this in Adobe After Effects, I still can't really see anything. It just looks like there's something on that rock.
Yeah, Rene reckoned it was a crease from the paper mache. I know some people have claimed that it's just the tripod casting a shadow on the rock itself. That's the explanation I've heard. But if you reckon it's...
But it goes like the shadow goes like this, and it keeps going right into here. It doesn't stop. It goes right on into here, and then it stops right here. That's where that shadow stops. So it just got me. It was interesting when we were looking at this.
See, I wonder with the $1 billion budget or whatever they're using, that they would not necessarily need to use paper mache rocks. They would use real rocks found in a desert or whatever and just lit them on their fake lunar surface. Because the more you get people involved in making paper mache rocks, the more people that you got to kind of ask to keep quiet about it. But if you can just go and order a truckload of rocks from a desert and no questions asked, then you start littering your set with them. But then later on, you mark them out where they look pictorially correct or good for a frame or something. Having a real rock of some sort, even if it's an earth rock, would make more sense rather than a paper mache one, to me anyway.
I think it comes down to whether we need to keep, things in continuity. If you're just dumping rocks all over the set, it's obviously going to be random and stuff like that. If you're trying to, keep things consistent, okay, this one goes here, that one goes there, and so on, you'd like to keep a track of where everything is supposed to go.
Well, it'd be a bit tricky, like if you're doing different shots and scenes from different, in the studio at different times, and things have moved around unexpectedly. It could be a bit of a giveaway, couldn't it? So they want the set kept in its preserved state during the entire production.
Yeah, but the sea rock there actually has been turned over by the rover. It's been hit. It's upside down.
So that's
why we see that it's right and bang in the center between the rover tracks, as if somebody, because like Rene noticed that there was some of the real tracks are missing. It just looks like somebody lifted up the front of the car and then dragged it and turned it around the place and probably knocked the sea rock over. That's what some people have said that it kind of looks like. Marcus, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, just always like to introduce my own moon rock. Because
does it have a C on it for chocolate?
Not like C. Can't get it. Sorry. Don't do that. If the reports of the faking of the Apollo 11 and presumably the other missions as well at Cannon Air Force Base and possibly in Menlo Park, because Scott and Robert have found a very interesting photograph of the cans of film that were found in a disused McDonald's restaurant. That particular restaurant, McDonald's restaurant, that particular restaurant is directly opposite Hangar 1 at Menlo Park, which is the big airship hangar that's been used now for quite a few films. I think it was used by Tom Hanks and where they were filming Apollo 13.
That's ironic.
Because it's such a large hangar. Now, if those missing Apollo reels, and there are thousands of them, really are located in this McDonald's restaurant, which appears to be the case, Robert's got pictures of it.
Yeah, pull it up, Robert.
Then it would be reasonable to assume that some of the faking of the latter Apollo missions were done at different locations. Apollo 11 was done at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico, near Clovis in New Mexico. The other ones may have been done in larger facilities, such as Hangar 1. So if that is the case, yeah, there we go. There are the film, the thousands of reels of film, which were missing apparently. But of course, it's very convenient now that there aren't machines on which they can be played.
There it is.
Destroyed. It's a story of incompetence of the highest order that NASA managed to destroy not only the reels of film that they have all this valuable data on, they say, but they destroyed the equipment on which they can now be played. It's only 60 years later. We can take silent films and play those at correct speed, but we can't take the Apollo mission films and play them because there aren't the equipment to play them on. I don't know what's going on, whether NASA are now being caught out in so many problems that their story is falling apart.
There it is right there. There's a McDonald's.
Wow.
There.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that's actually where they kept the reels from the lunar orbiter. I find it quite interesting and stuff. Is that I don't remember the numbers, but they had like thousands and thousands of of tape containing the original unfiltered lunar orbiter pictures, right? And in fact, it was actually mentioned in my article, as a matter of fact, that where was the name? Down at the bottom here somewhere. Here we go. With the Lunar Orbiter Recovery Image Project exists purely because Nancy Evans of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory had the foresight to save 2,500 reels of quadruple X from her superiors who ordered them to be destroyed. This is just from the Lunar Orbiter and stuff, and obviously a lot of the Apollo tapes, obviously they weren't very lucky. They weren't as lucky as the Lunar Orbiter pictures.
So her superiors, like her managers at this center, ordered her to destroy them. Why would they do that? I mean, why do they keep wanting? It's what they, as Marcus said, so many things have vanished or been ruined, and the machines have been smashed up. Why are they so keen? Because it has to be deliberate. This is just culpable. This is such culpable neglect that I don't think it's accidental.
No, it can't be accidental, because if it was accidental, somebody would hold their hand up and say, sorry guys, I messed up there. No, nobody's ever said that. Nobody's ever come up and said, I made a mistake. It's as if NASA cannot make mistakes. Not always scientifically accurate.
Well, what I don't understand is why that hair, or whatever it is, let's just call it an anomaly. Why that anomaly on the sea rock? Why was NASA so adamant on having that airbrushed out? And then, first they had it airbrushed. First, it seems like it's there. Then they had it airbrushed out for the paper. Then it shows back up again in another article. And now it's back again.
And they did it straight away, didn't they? Well, Jarrah was explaining how they did it much sooner than we thought.
Yes, the earliest picture to have the sea absent was appeared in what was the article called? Aviation Week in Space Technology. Yes, that's right. It was Aviation Week in Space Technology, the May 8, 1972 issue. Right. This came out a week after the original AP Y photo appeared in the newspapers, which obviously had the sea on it. Right. And so I actually conclude here, right, because there were so many. As I said before, they made about 100 or so duplicates of the masters, which were then sent out to all these different things. And well, when they realized, oh crap, there's a sea on the rock, we've got to airbrush that out and then send that off to the printers. Obviously, they've already made hundreds and hundreds of duplicates of these pictures. Obviously, they can't track them all down and have these ones airbrushed out and replaced with a censored version. Especially when they've been also not only they haven't just been sending it to their facilities, they've also sent it out as souvenirs to the various contractors. Hey, here's a gift here. Thanks for your efforts. Can we have that back so we can just do some alterations here and there? No, obviously they can't do that. So. Yes, and so that's what the reason is. You see, obviously they tried to cover it up, and even then they couldn't even do that, right? Because they left out the sea on the ground still showing.
So it's not just it's not just us who finds it incriminating. Obviously, NASA realized that before any of us did, that they'd left something incriminating on the photo record. Now, why would they do that? Why would they even think in those terms? If they would just say, well, look, we're being honest. And when you're being straightforward with people, most people things like that don't occur to them. Do you see what I mean? The idea that there's something incriminating and they have to get rid of. If you're being straightforward with people, you don't even cross your mind.
Yeah, it's
so soon after the mission. Yeah.
Years ago, I spent about 2 years working in a professional darkroom, producing photographs. And one of the things you had to do, which I was taught to do, and many other people know it, is that when you're putting a negative in for multiple reproductions, which this was, you make absolutely certain that the negative is as clean as it can be. You have little brushes that you can, sort of camel hair brushes, which have bulbs, so it's got an air emission system as well. You wipe the You wipe the negative very clean. You hold it up to look at it to make sure it's clean. There's nothing on it. If NASA were so concerned that their clean room was to be used professionally, they would have ensured that the original negative was as clean as it could be. You would inspect it, you would look at it, you would possibly even run off test exposures of the negative. You would look at the final print, and you would see if it was correct. If it wasn't correct, that was the time you would correct the negative. If there's something on the negative as big as this hair, I don't think it's a hair. I think it's a letter, the letter C, because no hair that I've ever seen falls randomly in the shape of a C. It just doesn't happen. You get hairs falling on negatives, and you can always tell they're hairs because they're all sort of weird and strange. But not this one. This is a very definite letter C.
It's regular, isn't it? It's like it occurs in a regular form, yeah.
Well, they claimed it was an eyelash, was it not?
Well, I said it was a hair in your eyebrow or something like that.
I mean, I've certainly never seen an eyelash that looks like the letter C. I've seen eyelashes that look like eyelashes. You can tell they're sort of a bit curvy, fairly straight, but not like this. Is just not a piece of hair.
So if you need to be, you could have a sort of say, well, coincidentally it looks like that, but then you'd have to, on top of that coincidence, you'd then have to explain how it got into a clean photo processing system, which, like I say, is not like, this isn't like Boots. It's far more intense than the conditions, higher level kind of conditions than you worked under in your darkroom, Marcus. It's special.
No, can I say as well, I think Occam's razor, as they call it, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The astronaut debate didn't know if he was pronouncing it right either and stuff, but Occam's razor conclusively shaves this fictitious hair, because like I said, even if it was the hair contaminating one of these duplicates, right, that would have to imply that this one contaminated duplicate was transferred back and forth to NASA headquarters and Johnson Space Flight Center, and even here's a third party set of prints, right, by the company's Space Photos. Even their copy has the C on it as well. Yeah, right. So if this was just a contaminated negative, this thing would have to have been transferred back and forth to all these different facilities, all these different companies, and people within NASA, people who are associated with NASA or whatever, who made prints of these pictures. And not once, while in transit or between print runs, did this hair fall from this contaminated negative. No, Occam's razor shaves the hair.
Yep. Good way to put it, yeah.
But mind you, all of those tapes that were being destroyed and stuff, I mean, they really got on a run with them, because there's 17 minutes of the Nixon tapes as well got disappeared at the same time. Like
yeah, just a coincidence.
They had that down in the 1970s,
Yeah,
making tapes disappear.
It happened in Paris with Diana. It happened with Epstein in his cell. I mean, it's just. Yeah, things can happen coincidentally, but I mean, as I said in my skeptic talk, there has to be a statistical ceiling above which you can no longer use that argument. Otherwise, you can just explain anything with a coincidence. You could say, well, the Sistine Chapel mural is coincidence. Michelangelo just got angry one day and started kicking paint pots around, and he liked them. The pattern looked really good, so he decided to keep it. If you see angels and cherubs and hands of God and things like that, it's pareidolia. It's your mind playing tricks on you. You see these things in the clouds too, don't you? And if you're going to, of course, that's a ridiculous argument. But if you're going to say, well, that's a ridiculous argument, if anyone says that, then you have to say, okay, well, if you think that's ridiculous, where's the cutoff point? Where is your statistical ceiling above which you'll stop using that argument? So I'd ask them, the mumblers of this world and their associated acolytes to think about that. I would.
And we're also talking, Ben, this was another interesting point, and Raza brought this up, but we were kind of talking about this, just texting back and forth on Skype. And I says to Raza, what's interesting about all of these paintings? Let's take a look at Alan Bean's paintings, and that one, those 3 film reels that went at Sotheby's for, was it little over $2 million. Now let's take a look at all of these little trinkets that people are selling off. What happens, let's say, for example, Artemis 3. Something happens with Artemis 3, and they don't get there, and something goes wrong. And all of this is blown out, and now NASA has to come clean and say, look, fellas, it was all a political propaganda. What is going to happen to those people that have purchased all of those items? And we're talking about millions and millions of dollars worth of these items. They're going to be worthless. They're going to be worthless. So I don't see how NASA could come out and say, listen, guys, we just made a real mistake here. Yeah, it was all propaganda. I don't think that's ever going to come out. It just, if it does, it's going to really surprise me, because a lot of people are going to want a refund.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Get the money back on that then.
That is one example right there.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Loads of cash.
Yeah. This is all very interesting stuff. Of course, we have, I think, once again brought up something completely new and original. Jarrah has done that, and has Neil. But now we're going to move on to something else. Now, Jarrah has debated an astronaut. So tell us all about that, Jarrah.
This came as quite a surprise to me, because the person who actually arranged that debate was none other than Danielle Russo, who is the granddaughter of Stuart Russo from Apollo 14, right? And yeah, you've seen that Bart Sabrell with Astronauts Gone Wild and stuff like that, about how obviously things can get kind of hostile and everything. But I have to say straight up, right? Danielle Russo, she was absolutely so accommodating and stuff. She was very respectful, and she specifically asked, "Hey, here's how I plan on putting the video out. Is everything all right and stuff?" She originally had titled her debate "Astronaut versus Apollo Denier." Obviously, I don't like to be called an Apollo denier and stuff. I prefer the term Apollo doubter. Denialism doesn't enter into this stuff, because, like, I firsthand tackled all the evidence that people, put out to try and say that we went to the moon. Every time somebody tried to make it work, I found there was always something else to contradict it, or at least offer an alternative explanation that didn't require manned missions to space. So I don't consider myself a denier. I consider myself a doubter. I said, Apollo hoax theorist would be better, to use for your thing. They said, yeah, sure. She changed it to astronaut versus Apollo hoax theorist. And he had specifically requested that a civil-friendly debate, and I was happy to oblige by that. I sensed the astronaut who I debated was Mike Mullane, who had flown on the space shuttle 3 times, and obviously, I as a astrophysicist and a geologist and stuff, I came to debate the technical side of things. He seemed to be more interested in debating the psychological side of things. He kept saying, "Oh, well, would there be too many people? They know astronaut would keep this secret from his wife or his kids or whatever and stuff." And he kept doubling down on this thing. But Danielle, she had actually prepared a very a specific schedule. The usual structure of debates. Introductions. Both sides present their sides of the evidence. Both sides take turns in refuting the other. Open discussion, questions and answers and stuff like that. Right, but right from the word go, Mullane, he first before I proceed anything, I want to make this absolutely clear to everybody participating in this discussion, everybody who's watching it right now. Okay, I don't want people to start harassing Mike Mullane or sending him, emails saying, you're a liar, you're that, yada stuff. I want everybody to be respectful. I've received about 100 or so emails from people saying, "Oh, he was very hostile and antagonistic towards you." I honestly was feeling some hostility in his line of questioning, but I put it down to emotion myself, I think, because obviously it's a very sensitive subject, and but anyways, he right from the start, he rather than sticking to the structure that Danielle had prepared, he sort of kind of turned it into an interrogation at worst, you see. But I was determined to give Danielle what I had promised, and that was a civil debate. And so, I kept my cool. I kept things civil. Every time he threw a question at me, I answered it to the best of my abilities, and I thought that the debate went pretty well. A lot of people say, "Oh, Jarrah, you won that debate." Obviously, the believers in the Apollo missions, they say, oh, Mike Mullane won the debate. Obviously, there's they're biased in that regard, I guess. But I don't really consider it a debate because it was more of a discussion in ways. And in fact, it was more at best it was a discussion. At worst, it was an interrogation. But as I said, I was committed to giving what I had promised, which was a friendly civil debate, and I answered as best as I could. And yeah, like I said, I kind of put it down to emotion. At one point, Mullane, he actually asked if I believed he had flown into space. And I said, of course I believe you flew to space. And I actually gave him my condolences because his first flight to space was with Judith Resnick, who was on the Challenger. He often gives, lectures and talks about the Challenger disaster. And obviously, I interviewed Roger Beaujolais some years back, and obviously he had developed post-traumatic stress disorder from his failure to save the crew. And I imagine, one of the guys who had actually flown with her in space, it must have been a very difficult subject for him and stuff. And so I gave him my sincerest condolences, for his loss, for having, lost a not just a friend but a co-pilot, a crewmate. And so after the debate was over, I actually received an email from Jack Russo, the father of Danielle, the son of Stuart Russo, and I also received emails from her. Basically, they said even though they do not agree with my conclusions, they thought I did very well at presenting my theories, and they thought I handled myself quite well.
That's true. You did. I think you did very well.
It's really, I mean, as you said, there was some hostility. I thought there was much less hostility than I expected because having my own experience, and indeed the experience of this team with people such as Steve Mumbling, it's almost impossible to discuss this subject without it getting heated. It's one of these, it's so emotive to people that it inevitably results in this, in a lot of anger. And so, yeah, that's probably one of the best debates, one of the calmest debates I've seen in that segment as well. And it's interesting he talked about the psychology of these sorts of things, because he actually made some points that I've myself dealt with when I had a little brief debate with Dr. David Grimes. And this is a guy who is at Oxford University. Now, I've never met him, even though he lives close to me and there's this university where I live. But he estimates that the moon landing hoax would have failed after just 3.7 years. And because he's come up with an equation, he calls it the Poisson distribution, to explain how conspiracies cannot work. But there are only two factors in this Poisson distribution, which is basically the number of people involved. And where was it? The number of people involved. What's the other one? I can't remember. But basically, he's calculated how long any conspiracy can endure. But the thing is, he assumes certain things, and I think this gentleman also did. The gentleman Jarrah was talking to, that people involved in conspiracies just fall into two camps, and one is active instigators, willing and malicious, and the second is completely ignorant innocents who would immediately spill the beans if they heard a peep about it. But real conspiracies don't work like that. Compliance with a malevolent secret in an organization is maintained by far more subtle pressures: herding instinct, tacit subconscious agreement, veiled threats. There's so many examples of that. I mean, you ever heard the phrase "open secret"? Jimmy Savile at the BBC. Yeah,
example that. Go ahead.
So, say Jimmy Savile at the BBC is a perfect example of that. Yeah.
The example that Mullane had put out that stands out in my mind. He, in fact, let me just see if I can find the clip in question here. Let me just see if I can play it for you guys. Let me see. Probably just edit out this dead space and stuff, but
all right. I'll say whilst you're searching for that, Jarrah, that I watched it. I found the whole thing interesting, but I got the impression that the shuttle astronaut had never been broached about this subject before, so he had not even looked into the conspiracy theories, if you want to call it that, or any of the evidence presented by any of us or anybody else for that matter against it. He just kind of flatly appeared to refuse it. And like you say, by the psychological, why would anyone want to do that kind of argument? That seems a daft idea, but rather it would have been good if we, or if yourself could have just been given enough time to present photographic evidence or radiation points, anything like that, that would have been substantial. But again, he just brushed anything, like you said, that technical stuff, he just brushed aside rather than say, oh, the reason is blah, blah, blah. Technical. If he had challenged you on the technical thing, he might have had something substantial, but he just brushed that aside and went straight ahead with the psychological defense thing, which for most of us watching did not really hold much sway of persuasion.
Yeah. It's probably not the done thing, actually, in the astronaut community to discuss this.
With all respect to Mullane, I think it would have been a much more even debate had they got Jack Schmidt from Apollo 17 to debate me and stuff. Obviously, we're both geologists. You know, I have a BSc in geology. He has a PhD in geology, but he also obviously he had to get a BSc before he could get a PhD in geology and stuff. And so, you know, being geologists, that would have been a much more even match. You know, I brought up the fact that the Apollo samples, they have ferric iron oxide in there, and there was also the incident with the rock from Apollo 14, which turned out to be from Earth. And then there was that new one with the Chinese, where they found the Chinese article, in which I actually shared the article in the debate, in which they say, oh, we don't dispute the moon missions, but we do dispute that the rocks themselves came from the moon, which is something of a paradox there, obviously. Like, if you went to the moon, you would have the real...
One thing I'd like to make note of is, given the fact that they have the moon rocks that they claim are the moon rocks, okay, and you've got one. We all have one. I can go out in the backyard and grab one. Where are the rocks from their geological surveys and exercises that they did on Earth when they went to Antarctica, when they went to California, Arizona? I mean, they spent a lot of time around, you know, the Grand Canyon and stuff like that. They went to Hawaii, and they also went to 2 mines in Canada, one in the Midwest and one in Ontario, specifically Sudbury, Ontario, the Big Nickel mine. And they gathered samples of those rocks. How come we don't see those rocks as an example to show that those rocks are quite a bit different than the ones they're now using to claim that they came from the moon? How do we know whether they're using those rocks that they found
and also
on Earth and are using those and claiming them to be moon rocks? I'd like to see the ones that they collected for that in the museum, and then their moon rocks in the museum to show the difference.
And also all photographs that the astronauts were using their cameras to take.
All the training photographs,
of their barbecues and their families and wandering around, because they used the cameras continuously to practice how to do it. But obviously, they weren't using a camera that had no viewfinder and wearing a big motorcycle helmet to
Neil, I think Neil fell in the shower. Is it raining outside, Neil?
Yes, sorry about that. The summer house doors are open and the rain's pouring in them, so I had to go and shut them quickly. So yeah, a bit of a downpour here.
But anyways, I found the clip. Let me just share what I was... This is the one that stands out in my mind, particularly during the entire debate. But obviously, this guy, he put this report out, and suddenly he's dead.
I'm not going to address any of this because, you know, we can sit there and argue about this and not go anywhere. You're not going to convince me. I'm not going to convince you. I'm still going to hammer away on what behavior humans have, and widows and family members who lost husbands, who lost sons, who lost fathers. They are not going to sit there and allow the United States of America to conduct a fraud and disgrace the memory of their loved ones. Their colleagues are going to allow it. Not ours, not Russia. It just does not happen. And so,
if I may add to that, I really doubt that the astronauts would have been at liberty to tell their wives about, you know, the secret stuff. I doubt. I doubt. If I may finish, I'm sure you're not at liberty to discuss the the classified nature of your 2 Department of Defense missions. I'm sure you can't tell me what was the the secret missions that you guys had to pull off on the shuttle. I assume it was something to do with spy satellites, but I assume you're not at liberty to discuss it with me or your wife. And so I doubt that the Apollo astronauts would have been at liberty to discuss the Apollo fraud with their wives.
I guarantee no husband is going to keep that information of faking a moon landing from their spouse. It would not have happened. Let me continue here with some more human behavior.
That kind of shocked me in a way, because two of his shuttle flights were Department of Defense missions, and you can actually look up up those missions in question. Right, there's very little information as to what they were doing up there. Obviously, it was a spy solo job of sorts of stuff, but there's a lot of the details remain classified. I actually remember, we all remember STS-27 for the wrong reasons, and that was because of how close it came to meeting the same fate as Columbia. Obviously there was damage, during liftoff, but the Department of Defense didn't want any videos broadcast so they could see the damage and stuff, because no, this is a super secret mission, don't broadcast anything. They ended up caving and saying, okay, we'll just send back some encrypted videos, which obviously didn't have the resolution to see those things, to see the damage. And when the only reason that one survived was because there was a metal plate blocking where the shuttle received the most critical damage. There was a metal plate directly underneath the missing tile, and that obviously took a longer time to burn through than what would have happened on Columbia. Had it hit struck anywhere else, I wouldn't have had that debate with him, And so, but that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is that obviously this was a Department of Defense mission, and I said to him, I doubt you're at liberty to discuss the classified nature of your missions with your spouse or anybody else. I doubt you could tell me, what were you doing up there? Were you putting nuclear warheads into space or connecting bombardment weapons and stuff? Obviously, he probably wasn't doing that, obviously, but it's a classified mission. We don't have those details as to what they were doing. And given that kind of nature, I doubt he would be at liberty to discuss matters with me or on radio or anything like that. So I found it kind of shocked me in a way that he brought that up to as evidence against the moon landing hoax. This idea that they wouldn't be able to keep it from their wives.
It's an interesting point, actually. I came across a recent interview with the UFO filmmaker, Ben, you would know his name. What's the guy called? He's Out of the Blue director.
James Fox.
James Fox, yeah. He was talking to this Scottish researcher. Well, not a researcher, he just interviews everybody. And obviously the nature of the video was they were talking about UFOs and things like that. But he happened to mention that he was next door neighbor or friends with was it Apollo 14? Who's the guy?
Edgar Mitchell.
Edgar
yeah,
Mitchell.
He was very into UFOs, Mitchell. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently he was sort of saying, I believe we went to the moon. This is James Fox saying this. He said, but obviously there's lots of people out there that believe we didn't go to the moon. And because he was friends with Edgar Mitchell, he said, I broached the subject with him. And, he said, so what do you think of all these people denying that you went to the moon, Edgar, so to speak? Do you think they faked it?
I did bring this up with Edgar Mitchell about some of this shadows and shit of that nature. He said, James, it wouldn't surprise me. He didn't say this happened. It wouldn't surprise me if some things were shot. He said it was the most expensive effort in the history of mankind. We had Hasselblad cameras, no viewfinders, and we had gardening gloves on. And we're supposed to get the best footage that the entire world is going to be working on. Do you think that we were going to come home empty-handed? He goes, it wouldn't surprise me if they had backup shots or something that they did. Not to say that happened, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It's a very interesting reply from Edgar Mitchell, who supposedly went to the moon. Why would he say something like, it wouldn't surprise me that they did fake some of the photos? I thought that was very intriguing.
Yeah.
Well, considering Bart's encounter with him, where his son tried to get his father, Ed, to have him waxed, whatever that means, by the CIA.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a very interesting answer you gave, James.
It's almost like a cop-out answer. That I kind of got the impression that he was really good friends with him and he didn't want to kind of address that situation or that particular line of inquiry.
I see what.
And so to get out of it, he kind of threw in this cryptic answer that would get him off the hook, that he wouldn't have to answer directly. So by saying, "Oh, it wouldn't surprise me that they faked some of the pictures just to do something," you know, and even if that was true, it wouldn't surprise me that they would fake these photos. Why would it not surprise me?
Don't be surprised if that becomes canon in the next couple of years with Artemis and stuff like that. Don't be surprised if you hear, like I said, there'll be a bit of fallback disinformation, which is, well, these people have discovered some anomalies in the films, all these people like the Apollo detectives, and well, you know what? What they discovered is actually true. Some of the photos we did have to do in studios afterwards. We kept it quiet, but you know, there's only 20% of them were done in studios. All the rest were photographed on the moon. That's typical backfilling. That's typical disinformation. It's like, who was it? Which one was it? One of you guys who brought up that thing about radiation? That
I think it was me. I actually attended the.
We were concerned about radiation. You see, we were concerned about radiation back then, but it wasn't, was it, Jarrah? It was all sort of like made to look like it was much older than it was.
I would like to bring this up because this actually happened earlier this year, as a matter of fact. It was I actually attended the press conference. This was the teleconference, you know, over the phone and stuff with what was it called? The Artemis 1 post-flight update media teleconference, where they're basically discussing the technical details. We got all the data from the thing. Everybody, all the reporters who phoned in, they all asked questions about the heat shield, which apparently suffered much more damage than was expected, and. But no one was asking questions. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, of course, the heat shield was damaged much more than they'd expected because they never tested it. They didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I mean, that test they had in, December 2014, when they sent an unmanned craft out and brought it back from about 5,000 miles out or 5,000 kilometers out, whichever. It was only returning at 80% of lunar orbit return speed, so it wasn't a proper test. So when that was apparently coming back from the moon, like Artemis 1, they didn't know what to expect. So
what I was going to say is that I actually was at the press conference, and I specifically, whereas everybody else was asking about the heat shield, I specifically asked about the radiation detectors. We don't have the radiation detectors from the mannequins yet, but we do have the readouts from these little minor systems. Let me actually get let me just screen share again. Hang on a second. Here we go. Hera, a time-pixel-based radiation detector system. Blah blah blah. We have this has actually been released just recently, and it's important to note that the Artemis has 3 times as much shielding as the Apollo spacecraft, and even with that, it still detects much more radiation than the Apollo spacecraft does. I was looking at the playback of my debate. I noticed I misspoke on radio. How much it received during the flight was actually, I've got it written down here and stuff. There was actually about it was about 0.144 rem per day, right? And you can look at the dosimeter readings from the Apollo missions and stuff. Like Apollo 8 alone supposedly received about 0.16 for the skin for the 8 days for the entire trip, you know, and the Artemis is receiving about that much every single day, despite having 3 times as much shielding. Something's very wrong. Now this was actually came after the press conference, but I actually spoke to in fact, let me play the clip. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. You can edit this in afterwards and stuff. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jarrah White with GW Studios.
Yes, hello, thank you. There were 3 coronal mass ejections during the Artemis 1 mission, one on November 22nd, another one on December 7th, and a third on December 9th. Such major proton events can pose a serious threat to the astronaut safety, might even kill them. How well did the Artemis 1 shielding hold up against these solar flares, and what were the radiation detector readouts regarding proton flux and energy? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with you as those events. I talked a little about those radiation sensors that we had across the spacecraft. So we do have radiation protection within the spacecraft. Of course, we're measuring the radiation we experienced on Artemis 1. That data will be very important to inform us going forward.
Actually, one point which I thought at the time when watching you and Mike Mullane discussing it, as a shuttle pilot or as a shuttle crew member, he wouldn't have gone higher than the Van Allen radiation belt. So he probably wouldn't have any knowledge about radiation beyond them.
And the heat shield on the shuttle only had to work from orbital speeds to ground level.
Yeah, 50% lunar orbit return. So any point that he was making about radiation, if that was based on his own training, it wouldn't have included anything that the Apollo astronauts would have had to have done, because they were flying out way beyond the Van Allen belts. They were flying out into deep space.
Well, the thing's, Marcus, if we did something like this, the skeptics would accuse us of making a circular argument. What they're essentially saying is, we know the heat shield worked, we know the radiation shield worked. How do we know? Because the Apollo 8 astronauts are fine.
How circular argument?
Yeah.
Now, as for the Artemis thing, when I actually spoke to Howard Hugh, who was his position, the Orion program manager, and he when I asked him, I cited there was 3 coronal mass ejections during the mission. My question was specifically, how well did the shield hold up against these solar flares, and what was the readouts in regards to the proton flux and energy? And his response was basically, "You know more about those flares than I do," which kind of shocked me in a way. Oh, I mean, like,
I hope the prospective astronauts were watching that, because they're going to say, "Hold on a minute, in a few months that could be us."
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
And now in response to what you asked, Marcus, and stuff, yes, he did bring up. Unfortunately, we actually ran out of time just before this was during the end of the program. We ran out of time to discuss this, but yes, he asked he cited the dosimeters. I always say them dosimeters. He pronounced them as dosimeters and stuff. I don't know which pronunciation is correct, but basically he cited those readouts and stuff, and I pointed out that he only would have to worry about the South Atlantic anomaly region. And he said, "Oh, I don't dispute that, but he says, just sitting there saying it can be done, I don't accept that at all." But I actually asked him if he had read this book here, which is this is one of the original books that Rene had cited. This is what Astronautical Engineering and Science. Now we have all the time in the world to discuss this. It was basically put out by it's actually mentioned in one of my articles and stuff. They put out a diagram. The section is called Problems in Radiation Shielding of Space Vehicles by J. Warren Keller, Russell D. Shelton, Martin O'Burrell, James A. Downey III. These were all scientists from the Marshall Space Flight Center, who one way or another specialized in shielding against radiation in nuclear power plants and the like. Right, so these guys are the experts who would know how to shield astronauts from the radiation of space. And in this book they put out, here they go. They provide this this diagram here. I actually use this in my article on Ollis. All right, this diagram indicates that at best the Apollo spacecraft is said to be rated at 8 grams per square centimeter, and it shows that a shield like that would only stop protons of energies up to about 8 megaelectron volts of energy. Anything greater than that's going to go straight through the spacecraft and bury themselves in the astronauts' bodies. Right, and in fact, there's another statement made in this paper, which obviously I didn't get a chance to read out, but I'll read it here now. They're right here. Where is it? The resulting shield thickness seemed to be quite formidable, with approximately 100 grams per square centimeter of shielding needed to reduce the total dose to 1 Röntgen per hour. Here they're talking, consequently, due to the very large shielding penalty involved, the intense region of the inner Van Allen belt will probably be a forbidden region for manned orbiting vehicles. Here they're discussing the inner Van Allen belt and the protons therein, and they basically say that we need 100 grams per square centimeter of shielding to stop the protons there. Now, 100 grams per square, if the shielding is water, that's a meter of water. That's a meter of shielding that you would need to block these kinds of protons, right? And I didn't mention this in the program. And Danielle, if you're watching, please don't think I'm picking on your grandfather's mission again. But the Apollo 14 is said to have traveled much closer to the heart of the inner Van Allen belt, and that's supposedly why it has a higher skin dose than all the other missions. Well, hang on, if you're traveling much closer to the heart of the inner belt and you don't have a meter of shielding on you, That's going to be kind of concerning.
That's a polite way of putting it.
So I think
they had a NASA sticker on them, so they're all right.
They're good to go.
NASA sticker on. And by the way, in the 60s, before they launched, they just turned the radiation down.
Yeah.
And now it's back up again. See?
Well, wasn't it starfish?
That's the easiest explanation.
They blew a hole in the ozone radiation belts to try and get a pathway through, and it actually created more radiation in the upper Van Allen belts or something.
That's an interesting thing, because I was actually reading something in Eric Chason's book, The Hubble Wars. He actually attributed the South Atlantic anomaly to Starfish Prime and Operation Argus and all these other high-altitude nuclear bomb tests. It was his argument that this South Atlantic anomaly region is the permanent damage of man-made interference. Sending all these nukes up into space to which not only over-replenished the radiation belts, but also apparently created this region where it dips lower than normal. And even without nuclear warheads and stuff, we also have ejection events from massive solar flares. In fact, it's actually mentioned in one of the Ollis articles, the last one that Pascal Xavier put out. I actually included this as my own contribution to it. But basically, if you look at the records of solar flares, you find that many of the Apollo missions, they were preceded by massive solar flares, which caused the northern lights to be seen at lower latitudes, seen in Texas or New York or Miami or whatever and stuff. Usually that's associated with a massive coronal mass ejection of sorts. And as we know, these things can over-replenish the belts. In fact, I actually compared the solar flare data, the actual proton fluences, with data from the famous example that seems to be cited is the CRESS event. CRESS was a satellite in the early 90s, which made some measurements in the belts. And when this massive solar flare happened in 1981, it over-replenished the radiation belts, and it just overwhelmed the satellite's detectors. And one of the things that they reported at the time was this was a huge shock to many people. But then they also said this region of space has not been well patrolled since the 1960s, so we're not sure if this is a common frequent occurrence or if this was unique. Obviously, we now know that it occurs whenever there's a massive solar event. We know that whenever there's a big solar flare, it can over-replenish the radiation belts and make them much more hazardous than they normally are. And so we see the Apollo missions, many of them were preceded by these huge solar flares, so we know they would have been in a position where they would have been over-flooded with these high-energy electrons and protons, and potentially even had a third radiation belt. In these kinds of events, ejection events, right? Not only do they, replenish the belts, they also can potentially flood the gap between the two belts or create a third belt, and make things a bigger hazard than they normally are.
And interesting, Al Bean was totally oblivious to the idea that it had even flown through the belts when he was on Astronauts Gone Wild, which kind of shows the level of knowledge that these astronauts were given about the Van Allen radiation belts. Presumably, they didn't need to be told about them because it was going to be no threat to them, because presumably they didn't go.
And if there was an unexpected coronal mass ejection when they were in the middle of their mission, they'd be in serious trouble. I mean, some of them are so fast they can actually hit the Earth within 8 hours of first appearing on the sun. And there'll be no hope of rescue in that situation. It's reckless, utterly reckless. Unless, of course, they didn't go to the moon.
Well, I was thought that it took about 11 minutes for light from the sun to reach the Earth. So any kind of mass ejection, I presume, from what I've read, it sort of says it's pretty much instantaneous, that as soon as you get a mass ejection from the sun, maybe 11 minutes later, it's going to hit the Earth and the moon. That's what I
light actually takes 8 minutes to reach the moon, sun, and stuff. So the light waves will take about 8 minutes and stuff, but the particles, they'll take many minutes more, maybe hours and stuff. Depends on because you see, obviously particles, protons, and alpha particles and whatnot, they all have mass, and so they can reach relativistic velocities and stuff, but they can't travel at the speed of light. They can travel close to the speed of light, but obviously they'll take some time afterwards to get there. I actually have an article as well on all this. This was published recently as well, published during the anniversary. And I actually tracked down the Rene cited in his book the major solar flare of Apollo 16, and I actually managed to find here's that diagram I was talking about earlier and stuff. You can see I've annotated it so you can see what kind of shielding the Apollo spacecraft would receive, and I managed to track down the proton flux attributed to this flare that occurred during Apollo 16. Right, on April 18, 1972, there was a major solar flare that delivered 30 million 10 MeV protons per square centimeter, and about 7.718 million 30 MeV protons per square centimeter. And so I did the calculations. This is just this one flare alone, and we find that this one flare would have delivered about 11.75 rem. Right, now that's the body dose, right? Now keep in mind that NASA claims they only received about, it's actually mentioned in my article here. How much did they say they received? They said they received about, where is the number? It's mentioned here somewhere. Hang on. Where is it? Here we go. They say they only received about 0.51 rads for the skin. Now keep in mind the skin dose is vastly vastly greater than what their body receives. Because obviously the skin is receiving the full brunt of the radiation going through it. You get sunburn. That's basically your skin dose right there. In extreme cases, you could require skin grafts from all the damage that you received and stuff. And I find even if I did the calculations for the skin dose as well, the skin dose would have been about nearly 200 rems. Okay, 200 rems is enough to cause a Revell, the severe reddening of the skin, right? Even if the astronauts had survived this one flare, they still should have received a massive severe sunburn from this solar flare. Obviously, that didn't happen. And so, it's a mathematical certainty. Here's the data. Where are the effects?
I always have a question, Jarrett, when it comes to the numbers with radiation, because when I'm looking at the documents on it, it does not state where the readings are being taken, whether they're inside the craft, whether they've been adjusted, whether they're absorbed numbers that they're talking about. At no time have I ever seen numbers from sensors on the outside of the craft. Where are the raw numbers that they're looking at? They're inside the craft. When 2014, when they shot Artemis up, they just threw it up like a baseball, and that went up there and came back down. The battery-operated radiation detectors were inside a meter of water in closets, lead-lined closets inside, full of sand and a meter of water around them. And they took a snapshot once a minute. Then a computer took the 15 snapshots, because they were only in there for 15 minutes, and averaged it out. And then they adjusted it again for what the absorbed radiation would be. Okay? All the rest of the 140 detectors on that vehicle burned up.
When it comes to the solar flare on Apollo 16, we had many different satellites detecting it. So obviously, supposedly, we got the dosimeter readings from Apollo.
Yes.
You understand? Yes.
Yeah, but like I said, when it doesn't matter where I'm looking at. Where's the raw data? Where's the outside of the vehicle?
You would have to look at. the. Go ahead.
They don't have any. There aren't any. I looked at like all of the programs. I'm looking for the outside. They give you the reduced numbers down. They average it out over time. You could read an article and it's talking about the amount of radiation per hour throughout the entire article. And then you come down and you see a graph and the graph has these nice little tiny numbers, but it's per minute. So they just dropped it by a factor of 60. But the entire article is based on an hour. And that's how they...
When it comes to the... We're just talking at the same time. When it comes to the Artemis, obviously, yes, they got the detectors inside the craft. They got the mannequins. They got the ones that the Hera readings that I mentioned earlier and stuff. You can actually look at the diagrams to see where they are located in the Artemis and stuff. With regards to Apollo and stuff, obviously the readings that they release are the personal dosimeter, which are these little things that the astronauts are supposed to be wearing and stuff. But in the case of this Apollo 16 flare, we find that there's many readings from all these different satellites. In fact, I've got they're all mentioned in my article here, right? We got readings from, let me see, we've got readings from the HEOS-2, IMPA-G, ATS-1, and supposedly Apollo 16's cosmic ray detector package detected this thing as well. But obviously, we know we don't need the Apollo 16 to prove the existence of this flare, because we've got readings from the various satellites that detected this thing. And
so really, we are actually in a situation now, I think, where all this is going to come again. All this is going to come to the fore again, I think, in people's minds. So as we've said on previous shows, this is a unique opportunity. It's an informational choke point as we approach the time when NASA have to deliver on supposedly a new manned moon landing or manned mission to the moon. I think it's going to be an orbital mission, then a landing mission, apparently. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. I'm afraid we've run out of time, gentlemen. But I want to thank you all for taking part. Marcus Allen, Jarrah White, Scott Henderson, and Robert Williams. Robert and Scott have joined us later on in the show, so it's really nice for them to come along and add to the discussion. So, and Neil, of course, Neil, our esteemed producer and director and editor, thank you very much as well for what you've done. And, 13 is an unlucky number, but this is the 13th Apollo Detectives program, and I don't think we could say that superstition really affects us in any way at all. My name is Ben Emlyn-Jones. I want to thank everybody who's been watched this program, everybody on YouTube or any other platform who's watched this program. Thank you very much. Keep watching the skies when all this takes off, because I'll tell you what, there'll be a lot more information coming out of NASA for us to question. I am Ben Emlyn-Jones. Thank you very much. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. And there's the photo, the Jarrah's famous photo. A unique document which hasn't been seen for decades, and we see it again now, and I think it proves something very interesting indeed.